Story 1. My buddy when his girlfriend got pregnant. He was a chain smoker, a chronic alcoholic, the kind of guy who smoked weed 24/7. He dropped all three once he found out about the pregnancy. Best dad I've ever seen.
One of my friends stopped drinking alcohol over just one weekend. Not by slowly cutting back. No New Year's resolution. He woke up after one particularly awful night. Poor relationships, lack of work, constant worry, and remarked, "I am done." He went to a meeting that week. Deleted numbers from his phone. Changed his routine. No more visits to the same bars. In a few months, his face had changed. Clearer and calmer. There are times when the best solution I've ever seen someone make to their life is to take something out of it. The thing that was slowly turning them into ashes.
Be careful about Leonizing the magic of parenthood, as far too many people already irresponsibly create fresh humans out of misplaced hope that it will magically force their or their partner's behavior to change completely or save a failing relationship. Too many children exist in this world as a desperate, reckless, or vain ploy to fix something when therapy or maturity would have been the far more effective option.
That's awesome. I had a coworker, great guy, but he had little direction in life. He was working a dead-end job that was far beneath his skills, but he just kind of stayed there as it paid the bills. He met this woman and they got married. About a year later, she became pregnant with twins. Both the pregnancy and the twins were a surprise to them. Kids were not part of their long-term plans. He worked in the fulfillment area at my company. He found a new job as a warehouse lead at a different company because they paid better and the location was better, and he worked his way up from there. He had already received one promotion before the twins were born and several in the years following. He and his family are doing great, and he has done really well for himself career-wise since the birth of his children. The twins are probably about 10 now. I guess he just needed a push.
Story 2. A total asshole got into a motorcycle accident. His brain swelled up. A few weeks later, after the swelling went down, he was the nicest guy. He fixed his marriage, his kids started associating with him again, his job got better. All from a simple lobotomy. Chuckles.
I've totaled 2 bikes in my life. During my accident on the first one, I experienced what people call life flashing before your eyes. It's a very real thing, and I'm not sure how to explain it other than intense brain trauma, firing all pistons on 10, activating every nerve ending to keep you alive. I experienced deja vu of nearly every major memory available in my mind, all in the same moment. It's kind of like seeing a flip book of all recorded memories at once. After experiencing that, I became a different man.
Unfortunately, I know a guy who went the other way. Nice guy, a bit of a chaotic drunk, but he never hurt anyone. He got in a motorcycle accident and immediately went down the right-wing crank, racist rabbit hole. He alienated most of his friend group by either saying horrible things or stuff like borrowing money and not paying it back.
My grandfather was a horrible, controlling man by all accounts. Up until I was 12, I never really interacted with him. He'd be in the pub or in bed. Even when I did talk to him, it was one-word replies. When he was in his late 60s, he had a massive stroke that almost killed him. He lost his ability to speak more than a few words. He became the nicest, kindest man ever. It was like I had a new granddad. I loved him. Whereas when he had the stroke initially, I just asked my brother, "Is he dead?" He said no, but I wasn't bothered either way. When he did die 15 years later, I was gutted.
Story 3. I was having all sorts of problems. I couldn't get up for work, was constantly late, had trouble doing my job, couldn't follow directions, had all sorts of problems walking, and trouble speaking to the point where I'd have long pauses mid-sentence. I was even getting lost on the subway. No one knew what was wrong. They thought I was drinking at work, due to stumbling around, but I don't drink. I got written up 3 times and almost lost my job. As a single parent, that would have been terrible. I just thought I was slipping and didn't even realize how bad these behaviors had gotten until I fell asleep at work in a cubicle in the middle of everyone. Turns out I had a vitamin B12 deficiency. It causes aphasia, dementia-like symptoms, mental health issues, and exhaustion. It can also cause permanent nerve damage and even lead to dementia. Once they figured it out, they just gave me a shot a week, and everything got much better immediately. It was crazy. I still can't believe the turnaround. Luckily, I didn't get a DUI driving under the influence. Again, even though I don't drink, they would have thought I was on something or get fired. My case was particularly bad, and they think I've had it for up to 5 years. Everything seems to have gone back to normal. Once I told work what happened, I got reasonable accommodations. It's supposed to take 6 months of shots until I'm cured.
Actually, 3 to 20% of people who eat meat are deficient in vitamin B12. And also, fish, meat, eggs, or dairy are not natural sources of B12. B12 is produced by bacteria that live in soil and water. Animals get it by eating those bacteria in the dirt or through bacterial fermentation in their guts. Humans, however, have very clean food systems, which is good for avoiding cholera, but bad for B12. So we have to rely on the animals that have already stored it or on modern cultivation. Though in modern animal agriculture, farmed animals also need to be given B12 supplements, since they no longer get enough through natural means. Because of this, many nutritional scientists point out a bit of an irony. Whether you're a vegan taking a B12 pill or an omnivore eating a burger, the B12 in both cases likely originated from a laboratory supplement. The primary difference is whether you take the supplement directly or let the animal process it for you first.
It seriously feels like you're slowly dying, and you don't know why. It's horrible, and even with blood work, a lot of basic blood panels don't test for it. I had to fight to get a blood test. The doctor just kept trying to treat my symptoms.
Vitamin D deficiency gave me heart palpitations, high blood pressure, and a racing heart rate. Sore and stiff muscles, like most muscles in my body felt like they've been pulled. Trouble sleeping, impending doom, I'm gonna die, levels of anxiety from literally nothing, headaches, extreme fatigue. All that lasted for months until and even after I started treatment. I couldn't stand while showering for 2 months and almost went to the hospital multiple times because of panic attacks where my heart rate would go above 160 to 180 for no goddamn reason. I also had horrible mood swings and trouble controlling emotions I knew were irrational. I almost lost my job, my fiancé, definitely lost myself, and had to find myself again after that.
Story 4. Our next door neighbor's son. He's in his mid-40s. About a year ago, he lost his job. Probably bipolar, he started using meth, lost his house, and his kids stopped talking to him. He moved in with his parents and really started losing it. Screaming and yelling at them, beating up his car, got kicked out of the house, lived in a van, came over for food, kept screaming and trashing things. Cops called regularly. The whole street was sick of it. He disappeared for a few months, talked to the parents. He'd been arrested and charged for driving without a license and drug driving. Locked up for 2 months. Some kind of come-to-Jesus moment. Got out, apologized to the parents and his family. Got a job, a cheap beat-up car. Sold the junker and the van. Put on some weight. Walking for exercise, helping around the house. Think he has an apartment now. Came and apologized to me yesterday. Turnaround was about a month. Seriously impressed. Hope he keeps it together.
Adding to this, methamphetamine is a stimulant that can bring on mania and or psychosis in people with bipolar disorder, as well as people without bipolar disorder or any disorder if things are just biologically triggered by stimulant use. Mania can also look like anger or rage.
I agree. Though I do think it's important to remember that relapse is very common and doesn't mean their progress up to that point is meaningless. We all stumble. It doesn't mean we don't have the strength to get back up. Sorry, I don't mean for this to be preachy. I just know it's easy for people who go back to a vice to become stuck in the idea that they failed and are less likely to keep trying.
It's sad that we've lost that mentality for prisons in the United States. Rehabilitation should always be one of the first priorities, not just punishment.
Story 5. I was 36 with no real goal in life. I'd given up on marrying and having kids, just sitting in lockdown. Then, out of the blue, a girl I worked with once, 5 years earlier, messaged me. 6 months later, we were married. 5 years after that, we have 2 kids. Meeting her changed my life completely. She gave me direction, brought back my ambition, and restored a love for life I'd lost long before. Because she backed me, I focused and found a career I love. My family and friends say I went from stoic and a little bitter to expressive and happy. I even started smiling again in photos.
Your name might be no emu, but you made me full emo, man. Good to hear.
That's awesome. Congrats. All it takes is just one person to love and believe in you.
Story 6. A friend of mine was drowning in debt, drinking most nights, showing up late to work constantly. One day his younger sister sat him down and just said, "I'm scared for you," and started crying. That was it. No intervention, no ultimatum, just genuine fear from someone he loved. Within 2 weeks, he had set up a payment plan for his debt, deleted every food delivery app, and started walking to work instead of driving, saved gas money, and forced him to wake up earlier. Within 6 months, he'd paid off one card entirely and dropped 30 pounds without trying. The thing that surprised me most wasn't the speed. It was that nothing about his external circumstances changed. Same job, same apartment, same salary. The only thing that changed was he stopped pretending he was fine.
This is love. Respect to your friend and his sister.
Story 7. My friend, when he got his high school girlfriend pregnant. Up to that point, he was an absolute delinquent. Drugs, flunking high school, and so on. Anyway, when she got pregnant, he straightened out fast. He had an uphill climb too because he'd wasted his time in high school. First, he got a job and scraped together enough to rent a tiny, rundown house. He finished his GED, General Educational Development, shortly after the kid was born. His ex, unfortunately, never got her act together, so they ended up divorcing. He won full custody, then started college while working. Now he's remarried to a beautiful wife, has 4 stepkids, and his own kid is in college. Best 180 I've ever seen a person do. Story 8. A friend dropped a toxic boyfriend, and within a week, it looked like she had a new lease on life. No longer walking with her shoulders down. She looked me in the eye when talking and started laughing more. It was like she had been carrying a weight the whole time without realizing.
It's a thing, and even in physical health. One of my friends was in an unhealthy relationship, and she wanted to lose weight for her own self-esteem, but struggled because she gained a lot during the relationship, along with some issues with her stomach. When she finally left him, she had this insane glow up. She started to look healthier, she laughed and smiled more. And guess what? She finally started to lose weight and her stomach problems disappeared. She is now in a happy relationship with a friend of mine, and she still looks amazing. It shows how much happiness, mental health, and physical health are connected.
It's quite crazy how the body and mind adjust as soon as a person gets rid of stress. Not always is it a glow-up. It's simply that a person no longer needs to be in survival mode. It turns out peace is all the skincare, diet plan, and personality upgrade one can get.
The craziest part is when you have that "what the fuck was I thinking for so long?" epiphany. Toxic relationships can be like the frogs in a pot metaphor people use. Things slowly get worse and worse, so you don't notice it. But when you're looking back on everything in hindsight, you question how the fuck you were so blind to it all.
Story 9. I made a New Year's resolution to be more patient. January was tough. February was easier. By March, I was enjoying it. 20 years later, I'm still practicing it. I often think back to that New Year's wish and thank the old me for recognizing and choosing to change.
Hey, I don't often interact with people on Reddit. I like to sit back and read mostly. But what you wrote spoke to me. Your kids are so young, and being a parent is so taxing. These few young years will go by quickly, though. Please keep watering the grass where you are. If you both are a great match and you know that, pour all the water on the grass, then blast it with sunshine. Your partner probably needs the extra love, even if they push you away at first. You probably need the extra love too, but take that first step to get things moving. As the kids grow older, things get easier. Little by little, you'll have your partner back. Choose love and patience every time. I'm praying for you and your family. Love will prevail.
I wish I had less patience. It has only gotten me in trouble. When people realize you're not going to blow up at them, they take advantage of that and walk all over you. Or maybe all of my exes really were crazy.
I made a New Year's resolution not to walk on grass, but always take the walkway. It has strong ties to your grander goal. It made me more patient and respectful of things outside of me. Patience is a bit broad and possibly intimidating. What are some small things that have become habits?
Story 10. My mom was a 3-pack-a-day smoker for over 30 years, which covered my whole childhood and up into my early 20s. She had a heart scare a while ago that put her in the hospital for a few days. While she was admitted, she was on oxygen the whole time and couldn't smoke. After the hospital stay, she never picked up a cigarette again. She told me and my siblings later that she quit because she never wanted us kids to see her in a hospital bed like that again. She's been off them for 20 years now and is doing well.
My mom recently had a hospital stay for a stroke and a blocked artery. She was in for 2.5 weeks. Same deal as yours. At some point, I said point blank, "So, you realize you've had your last cigarette already, right?" What really got through to her was accepting the mentality that she is a non-smoker, not a smoker who is trying to quit.
My great uncle was a heavy smoker and had a heart attack at around 50. He stopped smoking and is now 92 and fit as a fiddle. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if he makes it to 120, as he still works part-time as a handyman-type electrician and carpenter, by choice. He seems to enjoy it. His wife kept up her smoking but is also doing pretty okay for 87, so I guess who knows, haha.
Reminds me of a friend of mine who had a heart attack at age 38. As they were wheeling her in for the angiogram, they asked if she was a smoker, and she said, "Not after today." Chuckles, she wasn't a big smoker, but it makes no sense. Doesn't even sound like she misses them.
Story 11. Honestly, I saw an old classmate just delete all his social media and start hitting the gym every single day without telling anyone. He literally went from a total basement dweller to a functional human being with a real job in like 6 months. Sometimes you just gotta stop posting and actually do the work, you know?
I'm going to try this starting tomorrow. I'm deleting my account right now, and I'll report back in 6 months with a new account, of course. Goals: cut down screen time and replace it with learning new skills or reading. Lift weights 2 times a week. Go for a run 2 times a week. Make progress in my current study. No extra resit exams. Less alcohol. Maximum 1 time per week or on very special occasions. Work with daily, weekly, and monthly routines to make progress easier. All right, that's it for now. See you later.
I went from over 5 years of gaming more than 8 hours a day, from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m., to working a full-time job from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., hitting the gym provided by the job site every day. The transition was within a week. It was effortless. Turns out I wasn't lying when I said I wasn't addicted to gaming and could have stopped anytime. Couldn't have done it without my girlfriend, of course. Also, the antidepressants I started taking a year ago that helped too.
This is literally me right now. Chuckles, well, I've always hit the gym and focused on self-improvement, but I used to post every workout, every win, etc. I just stopped 2 weeks ago, and God, do I feel magnificent.
Story 12. This is me 1 month into 2018. I had just gotten out of the army, depressed, smoking and drinking, playing World of Warcraft all day, thinking my money would run out and I'd get fat. I got a physical job, started running almost every day, quit smoking and drinking, shaved my head because I was balding, and got better clothes. One day, while driving to work, I looked in the mirror and said to myself, "I love you." In just 2 months, I managed to run 50 kilometers.
That's so awesome, man. Congrats. Genuinely, a lot of people don't have the vulnerability to say that sort of thing to themselves and mean it. Good for you. Not only for being able to do so and mean it, but also for showing it in your life too.
Those affirmations in the mirror have absolutely been shown to help you change your brain to be more positive.
Notice, he didn't say anything about stopping. Wow.
Story 13. Me when I got a job offer. All my mental illness went away immediately. I'm not even exaggerating when I say this. It literally disappeared, and suddenly I could understand things I couldn't understand before.
Is so much. I've worked with senior executives quite a bit. It's incredible how often the first thing that a new executive wants to do is to trim the fat, even when there is no need for it and no cost pressure. I suspect it's tied to their bonus. What do 200 to 400 people's lives matter compared to that basement gym or kitchen remodel?
I went through a bad breakup recently and started a new job. At first, I noticed my depression started to go away. Then my boss started showing her true colors and my depression came back. But now it's not about the breakup. It's about an abusive boss. She's so bad, I texted my old boss, my favorite boss, for my job back, the one from over a year ago. He said to give him a few weeks. God, I hope I can leave this new job so badly.
The main thing I learned after getting my Master of Business Administration in a similar situation in tech, and then becoming a manager, was how little it mattered. Because basically none of what we were taught was what the company actually did. No analysis, no forecasts, no coherent planning. Just vibes coming down from the top, and everyone else pretending they knew what was happening while trying to cover their own asses. But I can read financial statements a bit better now, so that's neat.
Story 14. My friends who quit working for a toxic boss, also my former boss. Each of them seems lighter, back into hobbies, more connected with friends and family, and generally much less anxious. Most importantly, I can see their self-esteem recovering. Took me a while too, and it's nice to see it being reflected back now. And my husband, 2 months into dating, I went on a big trip with my best friend. When I came back, he surprised me. He had quit smoking after being a pack-a-day smoker for over a decade. His roommates looked a little worse for wear having to deal with him during it. It's been over a decade, and he never smoked again. He also got his drinking under control. Story 15. I changed my career from one that was essentially office-based to one working outdoors, landscaping, and improving urban green spaces. Being in nature and the daily, intense physical activity has completely transformed my well-being. The pay isn't great, but I'm happy and get by fine. And I sleep like a baby these days. Sighs contentedly. My previous career was in mental health services, and my stress levels started taking their toll on my body. Panic attacks, insomnia, anxiety, and so on. Most of my days today are practically stress-free, and the work to me is practically mindfulness. The work is physical, but I'm so much more suited to this role and feel very fortunate.
As someone who started their own little private gardening business, used to be a nanny, then a part-time teacher, a couple of years ago, I don't know if I could ever go back to working inside. I think being in the sun and amongst the critters, plants, and animals is more ingrained in the needs of the human soul than many of us remember. I also don't make a ton of money, but I don't think I've ever had a more fulfilling and peaceful work life. Congratulations, and I hope it keeps making you happy.
I volunteered in my spare time doing conservation work to gain skills and make contacts. I also got a horticulture diploma from the Royal Horticultural Society in the UK. I studied at home. It was quite a tough qualification, but enjoyable. I began applying for jobs when I finished my studies and found work in just a few months. I'm lucky that my role is very wildlife conservation and habitat creation focused. These jobs are hard to come by. Landscaping jobs have somewhat less competition. I'm sure there are many ways you can get into the industry, but networking and displaying a strong work ethic would be my advice. A knowledge of horticulture also stands you in good stead. Most people in conservation roles have university degrees. I do not. But most people who work in more estate management and landscaping don't. There are tons of courses and qualifications you need along the way, like learning to use machines and herbicides and so on. Warm. I wish you well in your endeavors.
I'm starting on this journey this week. I quit smoking weed and drinking on Sunday, put in my 2 weeks notice on Monday, and they let me go immediately. Ended up getting a part-time job at Walmart the same day. My goal is to get an electrician helper job soon and hopefully turn that into an apprenticeship.
Story 16. This one is sad. One of my uncles, a brilliant architect from a wealthy family who graduated from a top university, got into very hard drugs back in the 90s. He even became homeless for periods of time. Right after my grandma passed away, he decided to get his act together and go to rehab. He says his biggest regret in life is that his mother never saw him recovered. Story 17. My buddy went through this last year. He literally just deleted all his social media and started hitting the gym at 5 a.m. every single morning. Within a few months, he looked like a completely different person and even landed a way better job because his confidence was through the roof. Story 18. A friend of mine was really struggling with her mental health. Bad anxiety, never sleeping, depression, suicidal ideation, and so on. It was really bad, and everyone was really worried for her. Our friends and I would basically take turns checking up on her. Turns out it was basically being caused by severe blood pressure issues that were putting her at risk of heart failure. The doctors finally took her seriously and changed some medication she was on. She was cured practically overnight, and the change has been dramatic.
I'm so glad for you and your friend. It's enraging that it took her being on death's door before she was taken seriously.
Story 19, only me because I surprised myself. A fifth of vodka a day for 18 years, more or less. Classic alcoholism. High functioning, then mildly functioning, then non-functioning alcoholic over the years. Barely holding on to a job. I accepted that I wouldn't see old age. Stunted my mental and emotional development tremendously. Burned almost every bridge in my life. Overweight, heart problems, kidney problems. The works. I found a puppy abandoned on the side of a rural highway in the middle of nowhere. Skinny, freezing with some open sores. I didn't want a dog. That was responsibility, and I didn't want any more of that in my life. I searched for 4 hours trying to find the owner, but eventually gave up and brought her home, planning to find her a good home. However, she won me over in about 4 days, and I decided to try dog parenting. After all, it was quite lonely having pushed everyone else away. One night, about to pass out from my nightly elixirs, I had a moment of clarity looking at the puppy. I asked myself, what if something happened and she needed my help, but I was too messed up to wake up? The next day, I drew a line on the vodka bottle to mark where the bleeding had stopped. That was 3 years ago last month. Haven't touched alcohol since. I keep the quarter-full bottle as a souvenir reminder. It started with her forcing me out of bed for walks. Soon it became routine and we walked everywhere, to work, the park, the mountains. She became my go-everywhere partner. In those 3 years, I now own a home, lost 50 pounds, rekindled a relationship with my family after almost 2 decades, reconnected with friends I had pushed away, thriving at work, and genuinely happy. I don't even recognize that person when I think back. All thanks to an adorable little doggo who found me at my lowest when she needed help. She gave me a reason to continue and taught me so much about who I can be, as silly as that sounds. She saved my life and gave me something to live for.
Who the hell is cutting onions in here?
I can imagine this as a movie. Beautiful.
Story 20. Depending on how flexible the word fix is in this context, I'll say my friend had the perfect partner for him essentially fall into his lap. He is on the nerdier side, introverted, a bit overweight, and the type to only go to work, the grocery store, and home. He worked at a small school with an older population. No dating gaps. No friends or family in his area. No blind dates. No bars. No speed dating. No social events, frankly. Quite literally nothing besides chilling at home, errands, and work. I thought that with that lifestyle he might never find a partner. We all know several people who try way harder than that to socialize, are comparably or more attractive, and so on, who have not found someone for years. Then, one day, his school decided to pick up one student teacher about to graduate from college in his department. The only one that school took on that year. She just happened to be into many similar nerdy things, introverted, beautiful, kind, single, and from a pretty well-off family. She finds him attractive, and the rest is history. So he went from classic lonely nerdy introvert to being in a dream relationship in a month, engaged within 2 years, and they will likely be able to retire early if she inherits even just a portion of her parents' assets since she is their only child. TLDR. Introvert with no social life has dream girl fall into his lap via a temp job.
In my eyes, it's kind of like winning the lottery. I get a similar amount of hope from his story as I would from a lottery winner's story.
I don't think anyone would disagree if I called him average, with a bit of weight in the face. I'm sure she finds him more attractive than that, but that's not the norm.
Good on him for not fucking that up. Underrated skill.
Story 21. Me, to be honest. From 18 to 28, I failed every university I tried because I skipped classes. Ended up at my parents' house, jobless, with a 10-year gap on my resume, playing video games all day. Tried a test for a government entry-level job. 1,000 contestants for 30 jobs. Got it somehow. Started working in 2023. In 2024, started dating a coworker. In 2025, we buy a flat and apply for an overseas government job that pays a fortune. In 2026, I'm a property owner, making six figures, working abroad, exercising regularly, and we're thinking about marriage and kids. Sometimes I feel like I'm dreaming.
You are living my dream. Tell me more, pretty please.
Bro, your second paragraph is the struggle some of my friends are facing right now. Some got in. Anyway, congratulations.
Story 22. When I was a teen from an immigrant family, I was 17 when something hit me. I'm not who I'm acting to be. I'm not aggressive. I'm not traditional. I'm not interested in religion. My whole existence is just a mask to fit my family, my surroundings, the people who want me to be who I'm not. And I changed. I decided to show kindness, to understand, to learn, to read every day. I became the black sheep of the family. I called out lies, violence, and manipulation when it happened to others. I protected my siblings from these influences. I tried to be the voice of reason and understanding. 15 years later, my family relies on me for morals and help. My mom and dad are learning empathy from me now in their 70s. My sister introduces her friends and partners to me first. My little brother sees me as his mentor. It's worth it to change for the better. It will be incredibly hard and incredibly lonely at times. But if you work on yourself and keep your principles, you can be who you truly are. Story 23. I know a guy whose future wasn't looking like it was going anywhere. He didn't finish school, still lived at home, no job, and so on. Then he got a job. He turned that entry-level job into basically owning his own business. Married, with kids, a millionaire. Sometimes all a guy needs is something to focus on. Story 24. The fastest I've seen someone fix their life was when they stopped waiting to feel motivated and started acting on a strict routine.
Nope, got that, and never use any medications. I've just learned to have iron discipline and form good habits. Sure, it took me a few extra years to get my master's done due to messing around and procrastinating. I work better under strict deadlines and pressure.
I earned my master's degree and now have nearly completed my PhD. The iron discipline, however, is simply not there. My procrastination is an art form, a competitive Olympic sport, an exercise in grandmastery. Chuckles.
Story 25. Regular exercise. I let it slip and then I get some depression. I know if I start exercising, everything would be so much better. Sometimes it's hard to overcome that initial resistance to doing it. Story 26. My college roommate was a classic case. Barely passing classes, gaming 12 hours a day, eating garbage, no exercise. One summer, he got a warehouse job just for money. The physical labor forced a routine on him. Wake up at 6 a.m., work 8 hours, come home exhausted. Within 3 months, he had lost 30 pounds, was sleeping properly, and his grades jumped from C's to A's the next semester. The key wasn't motivation or some big revelation. It was just forcing a structure onto his day. Once the routine existed, everything else fell into place. Sometimes the fastest fix is just removing the option to do nothing. Story 27. About a decade ago, I started a new job, and there was a skinny hippie guy on my team. The others joked about his excessive drinking and terrible eating habits. It was a bit confusing because he looked fine to me. Turns out, he got diagnosed with diabetes and went teetotal and vegan overnight, and I was seeing him 6 months later. Story 28. A friend quit drinking, got a basic job, and cut off toxic friends. Nothing dramatic, just consistent small changes, but his life turned around in about a year. Story 29. 2 things that seem to expedite change that I've experienced or observed. First, receiving an overdue diagnosis for a non-visible disorder. Second, choosing to say no or decline offers or requests that bring little to no value or otherwise pose risks. Story 30. A buddy of mine cut out weeknight drinking and actually started sleeping like a normal person. It was kind of crazy how fast everything improved. Boring answer, but it worked. Story 31. A married couple of crackheads took too much MDMA. They woke up a few days later and just became normal. They stopped all drug use, got regular jobs, and became normal people. This was 10 years ago. The guy is a manager at Best Buy, the woman works at a call center, and they have 2 kids. I worked with their DPSS, Department of Public Social Services, and I know the story firsthand. Story 32. They stopped hanging out with the same toxic crowd. Their whole mindset shifted in months. Story 33. My aunt got a $6 million settlement. She was living paycheck to paycheck before that lawsuit. She's been living a nice, chill life for almost 10 years. She's still a millionaire too. Literal rags to riches. Story 34. 18 months ago, I got a sleep assessment and discovered I had horrific sleep apnea every single night, coupled with snoring like I was gargling on a chainsaw. Within 48 hours of starting CPAP therapy, continuous positive airway pressure, I felt like $1 million. Higher energy, higher motivation, no snoring, and a happy wife. Public service announcement. If you snore badly, please get a sleep assessment. Sleep apnea can kill. Story 35. I used to party hard in my 20s, booze, coke. I was blackout drunk most of the time for the last 2 years. Took a mental toll on me. I fell sick, got an ulcerative colitis diagnosis, and instantly quit drinking cold turkey. It'll be 17 years in May. Best decision ever. Story 36. In 2021, I was experimenting with LSD a lot. I took a pretty big dose after work on Friday morning, heading into a 3-day weekend. I thought, I'll mow my yard on the come up, but then it spiraled into the worst trip I've ever had. I almost called 911, laughing my ass off. It left me a screaming, crying wreck for days. But over those days, I started to realize I wasn't getting any warm, comforting dopamine hits from eating large portions of my favorite junk food. Then I realized I had a raging binge eating disorder and food addiction I'd been in denial about for 10 to 15 years. It was ruining my life, and just like that, pop, it deleted it. Over the next year, I lost 130 pounds. All my body pain and aches went away. I got promoted at work into more technical stuff that I know would have been hard as hell on my bigger body. I started running and lifting weights. Now I do multiple half marathons, trail runs, and Spartans every year, and I love it. Labor Day weekend 2021 was like my 9/11 or something. Everything changed after that, but in a good way, laughing my ass off. I crashed LSD into my brain. My food addiction is under attack. I think LSD made me obsessed with 9/11 too. Story 37. Stopped waiting to feel ready and acted while still messy. Confidence came after behavior, not before. Story 38. When I left a toxic company full of workplace bullying, discrimination, and even physical threats. I'd worked there close to a decade, and even McDonald's is offering a better starting salary than what I was drawing. Story 39. My father smoked 60 cigarettes a day from his teens to his mid-60s. One day, in the local pub, he got into a drunken argument with a friend who insisted he could not give up smoking even if he wanted to. He threw his packet away and never smoked another cigarette. Chuckles, stubborn prick. Story 40. For me, just 3 days of antibiotics for a bacterial stomach ulcer, Helicobacter pylori, and years of stress and unshakable anger just disappeared. 1 year later, I'm still happy as can be. Story 41. I got diagnosed with ADHD. They gave me medication. It was like being handed a map to my own brain, where I'd been trapped and panicking for 17 years. Story 42. I watched a friend completely turn his life around after moving to a new city. Not for a job, just to escape. Within 6 months, the excessive drinking stopped, he started sleeping normally, and picked up running. He hadn't addressed any of those things directly. Turns out, most of his habits were tied to a specific environment and the people in it. Remove the environment and the habits dissolved on their own. Changing where he was worked faster than years of trying to change himself. Thoughtful. Story 43. I quit drinking 10 days ago, and I can't believe the positive influences it has already had on my life.
I'm on day 20. Don't give up. It only gets easier.
Story 44. Easy. Stop the self-sabotage. Exercise, eliminate alcohol and smoking. Prioritize sleep. Eat real food. Avoid toxic people. Story 45. I work in services for the unhoused. I had a client who lost everything during the COVID pandemic. We were able to get him off the street and into housing, but his debt was massive. It really kept him from moving forward on his own for about 1.5 years. Bankruptcy wasn't an option. Then suddenly, he got a letter from a financial institution saying he had been given just over $2 million from an auntie he had never met. He paid off every debt immediately, and within a month, he was completely off our program and independent. Story 46. I consumed somewhere around 9 grams of shrooms and had a profound psychedelic experience where, for some reason, the message of take care of your meat suit was burned into my brain. The next day, I quit smoking cigarettes, quit drinking, changed my diet, and got a gym membership. Over the next 18 months, I lost nearly 100 pounds, my skin cleared up, my high blood pressure went away, my gingivitis went away, and I became a generally much healthier and happier person. I still dabble in the devil's lettuce occasionally and allow myself the occasional 1 to 2-ounce pour of bourbon, but I'm nowhere near the animal I used to be. Story 47. The easy answer for people I've observed in my life is long overdue divorce. The answer regarding my own life took a little longer. I had spent over 20 years in a relationship where he stalled me on marriage and kids. I was absolutely miserable. I gained a ton of weight. I was putting in 12-hour days at work because I didn't want to go home and be with him. It just made the resentment worse. Well, all those long hours at work got noticed. I got a huge promotion. I skipped over several levels of management. And in that moment, the ball started rolling on so many things changing. I had to get new clothes and pay attention to my appearance for the new job. I lost 100 pounds over 16 months. Professional cut and dye every month. I gained confidence. I got my autoimmune disease diagnosed and under control. I felt better. I ditched the ex. I dumped some of that new salary into fixing up my house and putting an addition on it. Once that's done, I'm going to foster or adopt kids, or both. The actual fix for my life took a while, but the change that enabled all of it happened in one 1-hour human resources promotion meeting. Story 48. I was a total mess and a loser 2 years ago, and I fixed it in about a year. I was an alcoholic, diagnosed as bipolar, self-employed, and broke with poor credit. Then I met my wife. I lost about 20 pounds and started eating better. I stopped drinking, which was very difficult. It took a trip to the psychiatric ward to get there, but that also got me on the medications I needed. I got a stable job in a career path that I find promising. I look and feel so much better, and we're happily married now. Story 49. My best friend was in the depths of a Xanax addiction. A 3-pack-a-day smoker, separated from his wife and son. Then he got deployed overseas. He was in the National Guard, so his family had medical insurance. He decided he wanted to be around for his family when he got back. He cut out everything, was stationed in Afghanistan for a year. He came back, got his degree in computer science, had a second child. Now he makes great money, has a beautiful family. He's finally found peace. He went from a terrible friend to a guy who was there for me at my lowest. I am so proud of the father, the friend, the person he is now. Story 50. It sounds kind of silly and insignificant, but I once heard Sam Shepard say in the documentary Shepard and Dark that when he was younger, he made a promise to himself not to get mad at inanimate objects. He grew up watching his father lash out at whatever was nearby when he was angry, and he didn't want to repeat that pattern. That stuck with me. I realized I would regularly get irritated at things like boxes, drawers, and other objects that obviously weren't alive. So I decided to stop doing that. After a few weeks, I noticed my temper wasn't as bad. I became more aware of when I was getting angry, and I handled it in a calmer, more level-headed way. My girlfriend noticed almost right away and told me I didn't seem as on edge as usual. At this point, I had been sober for 8 years, and it was one more thing that I learned how to deal with without anger or losing my cool. A small but very effective change. Story 51. My uncle was homeless and unemployed, with a drinking problem and a felony record. He hadn't spoken to most of his family in years because he was too ashamed to let them see what he was like. He finally pushed through his pride to call my mom for help. She gave him a bus ticket to her house and a couch to sleep on. She had two conditions. First, that he become someone he's not ashamed of. Second, that he visit his mom before she died. A year later, he was sober, employed, volunteering at the local shelter, and helping my mom with house maintenance. It's been 5 years, and he now has his own apartment, a driver's license, a stable relationship with a nice woman, and works full-time helping disabled homeless people access services. He successfully petitioned the state to get his criminal record sealed. He committed one crime at 18 and finished his sentence decades ago. He connected with his daughter that he never got to know, who is now a grown woman, and they get along really well. She says he's a great role model for her kids. And he did visit his mom every Christmas and called her weekly until she died last year. Warmly, Story 52. About myself. Story 53. I left my ex after 18 years. Now I have my own house and car, and I'm happy. Story 54. I had a buddy in high school who dropped out to join the Navy. He tested so high they sent him to Annapolis, where he became a doctor. His job in the Navy was caring for the football team. Done by noon most days. Went on to have a private practice. Story 55. Myself. I got out of a terrible, loveless marriage, a shitty house, and a job that paid $12 an hour. I got my own apartment, got a divorce, and got a job making upwards of $100,000 in roughly 6 weeks. It's only gotten better from there. Story 56. Magic mushrooms. Sounds crazy, but hear me out. And if you're brave, research it yourself. I quit drinking and drugs, turned vegetarian, started working out daily, became super sociable and extroverted, went back to school and became insanely interested in learning, got a job and excelled up the career ladder. I was the polar opposite of all these things. A daily weed smoker and drinker, unemployed, never had friends or left the house. All of that changed overnight after one dose of mushrooms. Honestly, I thought I was losing my mind for a little while, in a good way. I couldn't wrap my head around how such a drug had such profound, beneficial impacts on my everyday life. I started researching what the heck happened to me that night, and the conclusion is, I still don't know. But what I did find was that I was far from the only one. There are a million stories across the entire world where psilocybin has had the same effect on people. My life is forever changed for the better.
I've heard this, including from a good friend who swears it changed his life. I guess the question is, what's next? Is it one and done and it had its effect? Or do you think it's something you will go back to periodically? Could that open you up to potentially having an experience that doesn't turn out as well? And is it hard to resist doing it again if you feel like the one time was beneficial?
What's next is probably going to surprise you, given how grandiose and extravagantly life-altering I made this out to be, but nothing. Nothing is next. What I realize now, is that we as humans place these great expectations on life's largest moments. Get a job, find a wife, have a family, buy a dog, success, financial freedom, nice car, big house, etc., etc. Those moments are almost pinnacle moments we constantly focus our entire existence toward, yet they make up probably a fraction of a percentage of your life in terms of physical time spent experiencing that moment. Life is made of all of the moments in between those pinnacle points. That's where the beauty in life lies, in the other 99% to get to where you're going. So I've no idea where I'm truly going or what I'm going to do, nor do I have any desire to truly plan on doing anything in particular next. I have aspirations, of course, things I'd like to do, but I'm not explicitly focused on the destination so much as I am on the present, the here and now, while I'm on my way there. Next, it was one and done, sort of. I got a little bag of dried mushrooms on the extremely off chance. I've been taking drugs for nearly 20 years, and I've very, very rarely been offered mushrooms. On the less than a handful of occasions I may have been offered them, they didn't interest me in the slightest. I'm not sure why I decided to try them this time. I had around 7 grams, and I took nearly all of them across maybe 3 days. And to jump to a later question, not a single one of those trips was at all a comfortable experience. They were all probably what would be considered a bad trip, Although given what I experienced, I'm not sure calling it a bad trip is a fair description from society. I eventually got to the point where I couldn't ignore the experiences I kept having, and I stopped taking the remaining shrooms and took to the internet to make sense of what I kept mentally going through while under the influence. There's a fantastic saying I found that was prevalent among frequent users of psychedelics, and that is, when you get the message, hang up the phone. I've never taken shrooms since. The rest of that bag of shrooms is now in my compost pile. I don't know if it's ever something I'll go back to. I'll not rule it out, but for now and the foreseeable future, it's just not something I think I need. I got the message, and I've hung up the phone. It sounds silly, but I think if I ever need to explore that part of my consciousness for whatever reason, then I'll know. And I'm sure psilocybin will give me a call, or something like that. I was a polydrug user and a 15-year daily weed smoker, and to call this a drug is unfair. This was something entirely other to any substance I've ever personally experienced. Regardless of what I choose to do in the future, there's one thing I know for certain, and that is that it's not by any means a recreational substance to be used in the traditional sense of what one might consider atypical drug use. In my experience, it's far more of a therapeutic tool that should be applied with understanding and absolute respect for its effects. Those few trips were hands down some of the hardest times I've ever gone through mentally, emotionally, and even physically, i.e., actual body load. But on the other end of it was undoubtedly one of the most positively profound experiences of my entire 30-odd years of life. I became an entirely different person overnight. Optimism was my default mode. I became empathetic instead of angry. I was outgoing and felt the desire to be sociable when I'd usually be introverted and self-secluded. I didn't have any anxiety or depressive thoughts. I dropped any poor habit that had any negative impact on my health overnight. The world has its problems, but it's a beautiful struggle, and I need to be here to journey through it for as long as I can now because I've still got things to learn. How I view the world is entirely different. It rerouted my brain to view the world not as the deer crossing the road, but the road crossing the forest. And I feel like with that shift in perspective comes the contentment to not feel the need to use tools like weed or mushrooms to cope or escape, or whatever it might be that society may deem as a reason for drug use. Because why would anyone want to do that? We are single sperms out of an army of millions that manage to grow into fully conscious and articulate beings that live on a tiny rock floating across a million, billion, trillion infinity constellations for as far as we can physically understand. And against all odds, we are the only conscious and sentient creatures that we know exist in all of that space, and yet here we are, typing to strangers on Reddit. We are a planet of walking miracles when you view the world with greater perspective. I'm going to go off topic slightly for context. I've harbored some pretty severe trauma throughout my life from an abusive and domestic violence-ridden early childhood, which undoubtedly led me down the path of instability, where I found myself in prison multiple times. As you can imagine, I was a pretty pessimistic person. I hated the world and couldn't imagine how anyone could objectively weigh out the good and bad and opt for pessimistic behavior. What's funny is that didn't really change, I guess. I still think humans are the world's most prevalent present-day catastrophe, and in the grand scheme of things, I truly thought there's nothing one individual can do to change that. I realize now that is entirely counterintuitive. We make up the world as it is. It really doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, I might not be changing the whole world overnight by not eating meat or approaching every person and situation with empathy and understanding, but it's a start. All it takes is a lot of other individuals to do the same. And if nothing else, it's certainly changed my world.
I had a similar experience with ketamine a few years ago. It totally changed how I see people and interact with others socially.
Story 57. My aunt left her shitty Make America Great Again ex-husband. That one decision absolutely turned her life around. Story 58. A guy from my year at school. I never liked him, but he was friends with friends, so on the periphery of my group. Snobbish means superior, just one of those guys who knew he was better than anyone else and didn't feel the need to pretend otherwise. He got a brain tumor in his early 20s. He was faced with either a very invasive operation to try and deal with it, or signing up for palliative care whilst it played out over the next few months. He went for the operation, and whatever they did in there completely altered his personality overnight. Even he recognizes it. He freely admits that he was a genuine asshole right up until that anesthetic kicked in, and a completely different person immediately on waking. Bit of an extreme fix, but yeah. Story 59. I had a shitty ex who got me pregnant. He didn't show up the first time, but I ended up forgiving him. At the time, I was in the middle of a career switch, finishing my master's degree, writing my thesis while starting culinary school and working 40 hours a week in a restaurant. 2 days after submitting my thesis, I realized I was pregnant again. It was emotionally and physically hard to have a second abortion so soon after. He got fed up with it, didn't acknowledge his responsibility or support me, dumped me and ghosted me. I spent Christmas completely miserable. Got back to work. Randomly met a guy with whom we completely had love at first sight. I rocked at the restaurant, got both my degrees, moved in with him, and became a chef. We've been together since, and I am so happy with my life. Story 60. When I decided to move out of an abusive living situation, I was flunking school, not eating, not sleeping, barely getting out of my room because I was so afraid of my roommate, who was also my landlord since I was a lodger. Imagine walking on eggshells 24/7 and being afraid to go to the kitchen and eat because your roommate would flip out if things were put back slightly wrong. Thanks to my friends basically slapping me in the face with, "Here's the evidence that you're being abused." I finally took the initiative to leave as soon as possible. I started looking at student housing, getting to school to get away for a bit so I could eat at the school cafeteria. I caught up on studying and coursework, asked for extra help, and transitioned to another class with a slower learning pace. Thank the stars it was an option. I got back in contact with my therapist despite having to battle to get the money for it. Then I packed everything in a few days, and on moving day, 6 of my friends and my brother came and helped me move. They're all so wonderful. I'd be lost without them. I lacked basic necessities, so I searched Facebook Marketplace to find them for free. And ever since, I've been trying my best in my studies, eating better, sleeping, and not letting others use me as a doormat. And sure, this situation was beyond awful. And this story doesn't do it justice without pages worth of details about how bonkers my roommate was. But at the very least, I learned a valuable lesson from it all. This roommate was basically convinced that I was a helpless child who couldn't make it on my own and treated me as such. Imagine a helicopter parent without the parenting part. Yeah, yikes. It was a wild month, but it taught me to be more resilient and to love myself better. 2. I learned to finally say, I don't deserve this kind of treatment from anyone. Story 61. I knew a guy who was an alcoholic for over 20 years with 16 DUIs, driving under the influence arrests. I don't know how he escaped consequences for so long, but they finally tossed him in prison for a year after his last DUI, where he flipped his car into a ditch. He came out of prison, stopped drinking, and in the span of 2 years owned a house, a lucrative business making 6 figures, and a custom sports car. They told him he'd never be able to use his arm again, but he went into physical therapy and completely recovered, even though his arm looks like it's been through a meat grinder. He also dropped 50 pounds in the process. He's the only guy I've ever seen who actually turned his life around. The one thing he told me, though, was he had to cut out all his old friends to do it. He said every time he was in recovery, they'd drag him back down into it like crabs in a bucket. He actually had to move to a new town where no one knew him, just to escape people showing up with beer. Story 62. Taking a nice shower after a long day. It's not necessarily fixing my life in the big picture, but it definitely has made many hard days feel easier and more comfortable afterwards. Story 63. My cousin was going through a really rough time. He dropped out of college, moved back in with his parents, and just seemed lost. Then his dad got him a construction job, just something to keep him busy. At first he hated it, but after a few months he started showing up early, learning the trade, even saving money. Now he runs his own little handyman business. Story 64. I'd say it's someone who's disciplined rather than motivated, committing to the goal rather than the idea. Story 65. Cutting off the one person who kept dragging them backwards. I've seen someone quit a toxic relationship, stop hanging around friends who only partied, delete social media for a while, and just lock in on work and the gym. Within a year they had savings, better health, new confidence, and completely different energy. It wasn't some magical opportunity. It was one brutal decision followed by consistent boring discipline. Sometimes the fastest way to fix your life is just removing what's actively breaking it. Story 66. I had a buddy whose life wasn't really broken. He just wasn't happy. He went on an ayahuasca retreat somehow, quit his banking job, gave up his penthouse lease, stopped smoking and drinking, stopped chasing women, lost a bunch of weight, sold his sneaker collection, took up yoga, and started acting classes. You'd barely recognize him now. I don't know what the hell he does for money.